live on YouTube. And that's recording. And this. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, as promised, the one and only Randy Pace, live and in the flesh. And we are live on YouTube for those of you guys watching. He's waving to nobody. I got the scene set so you can't see him, but that's fine. Randy Pace is here. He is the immediate former chair of the Knox County Republican Party, or GOP, or Grand Ole Party if you want to go real deep into the remembering what words and letters stand for. I don't know. We're gonna talk about stuff. I have no specific agenda. I said, "Hey, what you doing? You want to come on the show?" He said, "Sure." We want to talk about it. I was like, "I don't know everything." So that's the plan for tonight. Everything. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, feel free to chime in and ask a question. I don't promise I'll respond to them, but I promise we'll at least read your question, but we may not answer it depending on how ridiculous you are. Almost Agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Almostagreement.com is up and running. All the current episodes are on there. I'm working my way through the backlog. We'll get them all up there sooner or later. We're also on almost every single major podcast provider you can think of, so if you can't find us, that's your fault, not mine. Yeah, I ran out of things to say in the intro, so here we go. Me and Randy Pace, everybody. Oh, I almost timed the transition perfect. Boom!
No doubt.
Now you can see us, everybody. Looking out in it. All right. So anyway, I'm playing with my buttons and knobs. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Everybody's watching you play with their primary elections, I'm not certain that lifting the restriction on the number of signatures required to get another party on the ballot is necessarily the way to go.
That's
However,
right. That's going in on the state right now.
yeah.
I just got a note from somebody. We were having no audio on the YouTube. That's my fault. It should be fixed anyway. Continue.
Is it fixed now? All right. So anyway, I think that opening up the election commission to people who call themselves independent or non-partisan is not a bad idea. However, comma.
Right. So
what do you do? So what do you do when that
somebody told me one time, and you didn't say it exactly right, but somebody told me one time that when you're talking to somebody, if they start out talking about whatever, as soon as they say the word "but," then you just erase everything they just said.
Oh, okay.
Which, however, is the same thing.
Well, but's usually what I sit on. And all right. So here's the deal. If somebody says, okay, I'm an independent and I want to serve on that body and we're underrepresented, quite frankly, independents as a voting bloc, people tend not to gravitate to one party or another unless they have to. And in the state of Tennessee, they kind of have to because for primary elections, it's one party or the other. There's always the general election. You can wait and vote in a general election. If there's no independent on the ballot, what do you do during a primary? Do you vote for a Democrat or a Republican? You can do either in the state of Tennessee. So nobody's really getting shut out. You can call yourself, you can be an independent, vote Republican for 3 state primary election cycles, call yourself a Republican and be appointed to the election commission as the Republican representative.
They have different. Is that party bona fide or is that election commission version of bona fide for that 3 elections?
So the
time out. I never thought in my entire life that I would use the word bona fide non-ironically. Just throwing that out there. Like I always anytime I've ever said it prior to probably one of the Ostermanis thing, I don't think I'd ever use the phrase unironically. I always here's a bona fide whatever. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, sorry. You see where mine's at. I'm all over the place right now.
I do, and honestly, I'm not crazy about the term bona fide. I mean, you and I have talked about it many times. You're either a member of the Republican Party or you're a regular Republican voter, and there's a distinct difference. And I agree with you. I don't think that difference necessarily should preclude you from serving on the election commission. Here's one of the problems that the legislature did engage in, and were convinced that they were solving a problem. More government, more laws, more regulation, generally, in my experience, doesn't solve a problem.
Right,
It just makes people feel fuzzy.
Right, and either equal number, if not greater number of problems on the other side.
Yeah, probably. So we're almost in agreement. Yeah, honestly, I think we're in full agreement.
All right, so you
brought it up. You should be able to serve.
You brought it up. My libertarian friends in the state are trying to push. There's a bill going through right now trying to lower the number of petition signatures required to add a party to the ballot. And if I heard you correctly, you implied that you don't know that necessarily that's the right thing to do. So tell me more about why you feel that way.
So if you can't,
or did I hear it correctly?
Well, no, you kind of heard it correctly. So the threshold is a percentage of votes cast in the last gubernatorial election, and the independents or libertarians throughout the state have undergone a couple of serious efforts to reach that threshold, and they haven't been able to reach it. So what are they gaining by if they made it 0 and they got there, what have they gained? They get on the ballot as that party. Are they really going to have they gained anything? Are they going to win elections because now they run a primary? I'm just not sure. Because actually they're setting themselves up for having to spend more money. It's easier to run in the general election.
But they're also setting themselves up for access to money or at least access to funding, because then they get the election commissions to run their primaries for them to help them do the same thing the other parties do, as far as, well, not that there's a overwhelming number of libertarians running for a certain seat, but when and if the case needs that they need to primary it, they now have the option to let the election commission primary it. And I don't know, it'd be a good conversation to have with Chris Davis again about the costs of running an election, and how much running a primary costs. Obviously, adding a different primary to a certain ballot is not going to cost a large number.
Adding a party to a ballot is not going to increase costs for running.
Right,
the
but
election.
so again, just
it's
for
de minimis.
Right, for conversation's sake, in a very small picture of it, say my District 4 here, Todd's moving out of town, so we won't get Todd running against Kyle next time, but Kyle's running to keep his seat. I run as a Libertarian, and we'll say, what was his name? It's gonna drive me nuts now. Anyway, Billy, whatever, is running as a Democrat, and then we all have primaries in the process. Well, if we have 4 independents and me as a Libertarian in the current system, that's, we're going to have 6 on the ballot, 7 on the ballot, because we're all independents except for the 2-party people. But let's say 3 or 4 of those independents are actual Libertarians, and Libertarian Party is trying to narrow down that field because they want to put one Libertarian up, because theoretically, if you have multiple Libertarians on the same ticket, they're going to split votes, which is just going to give more weight to the Republican or Democrat on the same ballot item. Well, if the election commission is going to do the primary for him, that saves that party money in that process. Now, that's a weird, rare, at least currently theoretically unlikely scenario, but that would be the point. One of the points of wanting to be on the ballot, and not to mention that L stands for something where I doesn't. That's the big one to me, is L stands for something. Now, most people don't necessarily know what a Libertarian is.
Wait, I'll just say it. Does it stand for something? What does it stand for?
I mean, it stands for what its principle and base and pillars and platforms and all the things I've talked about with the other parties are probably as consistent, if not, they're at least as consistent, if not more consistent than the major parties. And again, like, it's one of those things, like, you use the phrase all the time, and I get it, and I understand, like, I conceptually I get the idea is that there's a difference in an elected official that was elected as a Republican and a Republican Party member.
Sure.
Like, I can rationalize the phrase. Because one of the things I ask Matt at the same time, it's like, can you point to an elected official that I could say, that you could say is a Republican, is a member of the party, and that they act upon as a Republican? And then you have, it's one of those, like, you can kind of talk it, you can talk down how specific they are in their Republican values by saying, well, they're not just representing the Republican Party, they're representing all their constituents. So that's why, even though this is something the Republican Party's against, they still voted for it, or something like that. And so, like, I don't know, it's at least a core set of principles that doesn't necessarily uniformly apply when in position. Sure, Libertarians can cover that base too.
I think they can. And So again, I think we're in agreement. I think the state of Tennessee ought to have closed primaries. And what that is you actually have to declare, what party you're going to affiliate with. And when you're a candidate, if you're going to seek an endorsement of a political party, you have to be a member of that party. A lot of times we get wrapped around Democrat and Republican. I know Democrats that are great people. I really do. Just because they're Democrats doesn't make them a bad person. And even as an elected official, I've seen many Democrats, vote with Republicans and vice versa. So I think all too often people use party affiliation or lack thereof as a wedge to drive people apart, when we should really be using it to further our and again I'll use the word ideology, but that in a lot of circles has negative connotations. I believe that less government is better, whereas somebody on the left might disagree with me. We need more government to help those less fortunate. Well, I think many people have been raised out of their impoverished circumstance in far greater numbers when you implement government policies that are less restrictive rather than more restrictive. Anyway, like I said, independents and libertarians, if you want a green party, if you want a red party, if you want a dog and cat party, put them on the ballot. We could do away with primaries and let the parties do them themselves. We talked about this,
Right.
on a previous show.
That's kind of where I'm at on it.
At the county level, we have the ability to do that without, permission. The governing body for the county party can say, we're going to close our primaries. But that doesn't apply to state level offices. The state party would,
Right.
But the state party is restricted by the state legislature because now you're talking about crossing political boundaries. Knox County, Davidson County,
Right.
Shelby County, blah, blah, blah.
Right. All those other little counties in between that aren't that important, but whatever.
No, they're very important. They're very important.
I know they take my tax money and spend it on their schools.
So, yeah,
I mean, it's a fact. It was a little hyperbolic of a statement or whatever, but it is a fact that as described to me as we are what they call a donor county as far as school money goes.
Well, of course we are.
We
spend as academia spends way too much of the government's money on nonsense. Plain and simple. Cut their budget in half, you end up with a better product.
I don't know what to do, but I don't like it's like healthcare. This K through 12 specifically. I think there's other issues at play in education, but K through 12 specifically, like it's one of those that like everybody agrees there's a problem. This isn't working the way we're doing it, and this little inch in one way or it's just slowly inching one way. Like I mean, I got into a big argument on one of the Facebook groups. It's like, teachers don't get paid enough. It's like, well, how much they need to get paid? The school budget isn't big enough. Well, how big does it need to be? Because if you can't give me a number, then it's always bigger.
The teachers' salaries are not taking the lion's share of the money in academic costs. They're just not. It's taken up in administration and bureaucracy. Our legislatures and our school districts need to work better together. First thing out of the school district or academia's mouth is we don't have enough money. So the legislature tries to put in place more money, and it's just not going to teach children, or it's not going to teacher salaries. It's going to more bureaucratic administration.
I mean,
let's test the lead in the water, and let's do it on this frequency. We've never found lead in the water in this school, and we test other sites,
right? And then they could say, look,
water quality, but we do it in schools because it's for the children.
Right, we spent more money on the school. Aren't you happy? No, that's not what we want you to spend the money on. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So, and unfortunately, the people that control those academic institutions are generally from those academic institutions. So they're, I've been a teacher for 20 years. I'd make a great school board member. No, actually, I don't think you would. Unless, of course, over that 20 years time, you realize that, hey, we're not doing it very well.
Yeah, I mean that's one that I'm like of all the things that I've dove way past my depth in the last year trying to do this podcast. School board stuff is where I go the blankest, the fastest. Like Mr. Ron McPherson, who's been very gracious and very helpful, and he's tried really hard, and he insulted every single person in Knox County by telling me that I'm one of the more educated people in Knox County as far as the school board budget goes. That's a bad rap for the rest of you guys. I mean,
so listen, there are many brilliant individuals working within our academic institutions. Their skill sets are far beyond anything on a particular subject matter than I'll ever attain. And I freely and openly admit that. But when it comes to government function, government's role in providing adequate education and the resources that it takes, I'm good. I mean, I may not know exactly how photosynthesis works, but I don't need to. If my focus is making sure that everybody has the opportunity to get that education, to learn that information, then I'm happy to put those people in place to teach it. But I don't need the level of bureaucracy and waste and poor management that we have right now to accomplish.
Right.
that.
I don't know. I haven't dropped it through, but it might have been you who's telling me about it, that like of the 9 school board members, 8 of them are teachers or former teachers.
Yeah, something like that. I tend not to focus so much on the school boards, because until we fix what we're structurally facing in our government, and I don't mean the elected school board members, I mean legislative government, people in the municipal government, locally, state house, nationally, and
Well, because I mean,
we're not going to fix nationally in my lifetime.
the big thing for me that was such a struggle trying to get into it is like, because we got into it during the primaries last year,
Sure.
and we were trying to figure out who's what and whatever, and what got me, what probably propelled me deeper into doing the podcast and talking to more people than anything, is watching people campaign on schools. And I think about it and I go, okay, yeah, I want people that care about what's going on in the schools. And then I think about it and I go, but we have a school board that's separate from the commission, separate from the council, separate from the mayor's office. What is,
What's the holdup? What's the problem?
What is
need
a
more
District 4 commission? No, what does a District 4 commissioner have to do with the school district? Nothing. They sign the budget, which again, to my understanding, is a fixed percentage of the total county budget, more or less. And as long as the budget's not completely out of control, the mayor's office will sign it and the commissioners will sign as follows. So what does a commissioner have to do with the school board? What do they have to do with what's going on in the schools?
So the county and state legislature writes the rules. Okay, so if the schools say there ought to be a law, now they're holding our legislators accountable.
I don't even think statewide. I agree with you, but I don't know if that counts on the local level. I don't know that the commission can do anything with the schools except for sign checks.
Well, all right. So the school boards are getting more money than just what is statutorily required.
Correct.
And those decisions are being made locally.
That's true, because that's the whole grant. The grant approval thing has to go through the commission. That's true. Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we asked a question? I'll give you an example, and this is a low-level one. The Haslam family donated money to one of the local schools for music equipment. And in order to get the music equipment, you had to use this particular trucking company, and you had to get it from this particular company that had the music equipment that you wanted, and the cost was greater than what the school could have actually gotten it for.
Right.
Well, why? Why didn't somebody on county commission go, well, what are we doing here? What is it? What's the goal? You've got money. Was there strings attached? If there were strings attached, maybe we shouldn't be taking that money. If the Haslams want to give $25,000 to the school, and then they want the school to spend additional funds or more than the going rate,
Right,
okay,
and it's
something's wrong with not asking the question as a sitting county commissioner why we're doing that.
Right, because it's politically unadvantageous to question receiving funds for the school. I mean, realistically, because that's one of those that paints the picture that they're like,
that's right.
That
he voted no against this.
Right, he said no to this grant from running the example. The Haslam family said they give $50 million to the school, and he said, "Are you sure?" No, he said, well, why? What are we going to do with it? What do we have to do with it? Like, I get it. But it goes back to the thing. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, it's the universal theme, whether it's spoken or not, in almost every episode I talk about, including with elected officials that I've talked to, is we as a whole don't know how this thing works.
Well, all right. So, and who's supposed to be teaching us? Well, aside from our parents, and believe me, my family taught me enough. And the general theme was, don't piss on my shoes and tell me it's raining. Okay, you can apply that to everything in life,
right,
including what your government does. If your government says, we're going to buy an apple, and the apple's only going to cost us $2.7 million, and you look at them and you go, I can buy it at a farm stand for a nickel. I can buy it at a grocery store for 10 cents. I can get it in a can already prepared. I can buy it in a little cup in applesauce. Why are we paying $1.7 million for it? Well, don't they pat you on the head and say,
don't worry about it.
Don't worry. We got it under control.
Right. It's like Max on the Big Show. We were talking.
We're going to pay prevailing wage.
Right. We were talking on the Big Show a while ago about Defense Department spending, and he's like I remember he is a Marine. They're always Marines, whatever.
Once a Marine, always.
Yeah, that
thing.
But he was talking about it, and he's like, I can't remember what the gun, like M5, I think is what he said it was. I'm not a super gun guy. I've got my handful that I need for what I want to do, but he's like I could go down the street, right now to the gun shop or whatever, and I could get an M5, which is the rifle that was given to me when I was in the Marine Corps, for like $750. He's like, but somehow the Marine Corps is paying $2,000 a piece. Tell me how that works.
So, is it the exact same one?
I don't know. Well, I mean, probably not, because the Marine Corps has probably got a fully automatic where they can't sell a fully on the street corner. Which is probably, and realistically, it probably is the exact same gun. They just took one knob off of a gear so that it can't go fully. Yeah. Right. But making it legal should make it more expensive if you have to do a modification to what the original gun was, I would think, on a normal business practice.
So staying on the theme of grant funding, before I came over here, I don't know whether it was a commercial, a news clip, or what. Some young girl's talking about making grant funding available for whatever her shtick was. It was on in the background. I really wasn't paying that much of attention, but she was talking. It was like she was talking up, children can apply for a grant and get money to do X. Save the whales. I don't know what it was. And I thought to myself, if the general public actually knew what grant funding was all about in this country, and how your government manipulates.
Oh yeah, I mean, I agree. I thought grant money was free money too.
Yeah, jeez, it's bad.
I know.
It's bad.
I know. I disappoint you. I'm supposed to be smarter than that.
No, you don't disappoint me. Listen, it's a learning curve. Not everybody understands everything. We have elected officials that run for office, have no idea. They get there and they go, "Oh, I didn't know," and then they go, "Oh crap, I don't want to do this anymore."
Well, see, that's the thing. I mean, that's the thing too, and that's one of those, like, I go back and forth on how nefarious I think the origin of it is. I've come to the conclusion that whether it's state, federal, local, whatever it is, we have a state of Tennessee. We've been here for 240 years or whatever. You got 240 years of little ads here, little subtractions there, ads here, and then I make the complaint. It's too damn complicated to function with the book that is living in the state of Tennessee. If you're going to try to go down the rabbit hole, you need to be a lawyer. You need to have a lawyer on hand and all this stuff. And it's like, because one of my big complaints, one of the top level complaints historically out of me in one of the problems in governance to me is simple things, something that should be a simple thing. Like, I'm going to do a fundraiser. I want to do a fundraiser. I'm going to host it at my business. And absolutely, it is a promotion for my business as well. It is raising funds for, I think we used Wounded Warrior Project was our target organization. And I like to play poker. I got a lot of friends that like to play poker. I want to do a poker tournament. Well, this is in my business. It is a fundraiser, but this is in my business. So I want to be extra careful. I don't want to do this thing, go out and promote it and spend a bunch of money trying to get this thing going to, I don't know, get arrested. Not on my list.
Secretary of State's website.
Not on my list.
Right there.
I called his office. I called the district attorney of the county. I think I think I got all the way up to the assistant to the attorney general of the state of Tennessee, and the answer I got was, I don't think they would break it up.
All right, so you have to go and read it for yourself, because if you go and ask somebody
the problem
a specific question,
is right, because the answer is
so much of it nobody knows.
Because the answer
Even
is
the people that are supposed to.
Right. The answer is ask your lawyer. And really, what you're doing, you're not asking your lawyer if it's illegal or illegal. You're asking your lawyer.
Can I get away with it?
No. You're asking your lawyer is, do you think you can win this if you're defending me on it? That's what you're asking your attorney when you're asking him if something is legal or illegal. It's hey buddy, I want to do this thing. If I do this and the cops come, can you keep me out of jail? That's what you're asking on whatever it is. Can I can I cross the street at this intersection from this corner to this corner? If you ask your attorney that, What you're not asking whether it's legal or not. It's whether if the cops arrest you for it, will he get you out of jail? Is he capable of it? Does he think there is, precedent and all that stuff that he can argue that in court and get you out of jail? It's not a question of legal or illegal. It's never a question of illegal or illegal. And that's the point of my problem, is that it's so big, it's so complicated. It's got layers and layers and layers. We were doing something on the CARES Act or the PACT Act, one of the COVID-19 acts. We were talking about it. Yeah. So I went to the Senate.gov or whatever. I pulled the bill up. We were reading through it and talking about some different stuff. Get to one section of it. We're reading about it, and gratefully we are in the we're in the 21st century and we have technology and stuff. And so there's all these hyperlinks in the text, and that hyperlink is to the reference. And so it's like, this word, like this, and then the legalese that it speaks, and then you hit the hyperlink and it gives you the definition of this thing, and then inside that definition there's another hyperlink, and we go like four or five hyperlinks deep to get one sentence of a 6,432 page bill that just got signed into law.
You know who writes legislation, right? Attorneys.
Lobbyists.
Attorneys.
Lobbyists, big business, attorneys.
Lobbyists have attorneys, yes. So the state...
Knoxville, the police department.
The state legislature, what do they deal with? Anywhere from 700 to 900 bills every cycle.
I think Mazzy told me 1,600.
Yeah.
1,200 or something like that. It was.
It can go that high.
Multiple thousand or 1,000 plus.
But so a lot of those they're changing one word, or they're correcting a difference. But so we wrote this law, and now we've got to change this law. So that's all we're doing. So it's a simple administrative function. So that's what a lot of those bills are. But there is a lot of legislation that gets introduced, and I look at it and it's like they're not using the hyperlinks.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Thankfully, we're not. Right.
And oh, by the way, why are we doing this?
You got to go to the library, not just any library, the state law library, and then go find this book on this shelf. Go to this page. Go to this line, and that's what the hyperlink's doing. Like, I can't imagine this 50 years ago trying to do anything functional.
So, and that's why we probably had less laws.
Maybe, but I mean, my point is, but to go back to the beginning of it, the point is, like, I go back and forth on how nefarious I think it is, but the point is, I think 240 plus years old state or whatever, we have all this stuff that piles up and piles up and piles up, and I don't think it was intentionally made complicated, but I think there's very little incentive to uncomplicate it, because those people that know how to play inside of it don't have as much scrutiny, because we don't get it. I don't understand it. People don't understand it. So they can do things like change 3 words in a document of, I don't know, a couple hundred pages, and what that does to the entirety of what that document did in the first place, I don't know. That guy doesn't know.
You understand that they threw a party when I left New Jersey and came back to my home state.
Because you were burning books? What?
Well, no, because we would sit there.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't mean burning books like in the Nazi way. I know it's bad to make Nazi reference. I meant burning books like you were taking things down and simplifying them, so burning all the law books that you don't need anymore. That's
we had a sign ordinance, and it needed to be updated. And I went and redlined the whole thing, and they're like, "Well, state law says, time out. Why does the local ordinance need to address that here if there's already a state law in the books?" Well, I don't, and I was like, well, we're not going to. They're done. And what used to take 2 or 3 weeks to craft and vet an ordinance takes all of 10 minutes with a red pen. Truly. And
Right.
if the state legislature started looking at it that too often, the public says there ought to be a law. Oh, we need another law. We need to fix this. We need to address. Hold on a second. Does the entire state of Tennessee need to address that, or does a local community need to address it?
Well, see, that's another one. I think that even as deep as I've gotten, I'm not exactly sure where the layers sit. What can, because I mean, still with the Board of Health thing, even in past tense, I still don't know that they can do what they did.
Yeah, sometimes I believe, truly, I wake up I've said it a million times. I wake up in the morning, I don't want to know what I know about your government. I believe that
we can go back in time on that statement. Because I remember when you texted me that the first time, I was like, "Oh shit, we got some deep dark secrets," and then it was just it's just the,
No,
it's the annoying
there
stuff.
are a lot of deep dark secrets.
Yeah, but I thought you were going to tell me about the aliens and that kind of stuff.
No. I believe there are people that work and have worked in the halls of government for decades that don't want the public to know.
No, that's
they
what I'm
truly
saying.
don't.
Because I think that's my point.
Because
Is
if
like,
they did it, they'd be out of a job.
Yeah, I think that was my point. Is that it is strongly disincentivized for them to fix the complications because they're one of a very short list of people that can maneuver inside of it, and being able to maneuver inside of it is a good thing if you know what you're doing, because nobody gets to watch what you're doing, or if they are, they can't see what you're doing. They can watch you do it, but it's like, I don't know.
So I had a conversation with a numbers guy one time. The guy was an actuary. He was brilliant.
Oh, I thought you meant like from the Bible, the book of Numbers. Okay.
No,
I'm
not that old. you got to stop doing that to me, man. I'm not that old. So
you're the one that's how many times have you retired?
Which time?
That's what I said. How many times have you retired?
I retired from one spot twice. Anyway, so
I'm just saying, if you've retired multiple times, I think that counts as you're old. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm old. So he's a numbers guy, just brilliant, and to watch him, you hand him a document and he goes through it, and then he makes a statement or asks questions that you quite frankly would have never fathomed. So I had him look at something one time, and we were talking about it, and he was like, I don't understand. I said, well, let me put it to you this way. There are 50 states, right? Yes. There's 2 senators in each state, right? Yes. And he looked at me and he went, wow. And I was like, yeah, wow. Think about that for a minute. There are 100 guys in this country that are truly controlling the everyday life of 350 plus million people.
Right.
That's a tremendous responsibility. Can they do it as an individual? No, they need other people. Well,
I mean,
yeah, they need other people if their job is to do what? What is a senator's job? Think about that for a minute. What is his job? He's supposed to represent the people's interest. Well, if he's in Washington and he's worried about doling out hundreds of millions of dollars to a bridge to nowhere, somehow I don't think he's focused on the people's interest. Some of the problems we face as a nation are complex, and they're difficult. I'm not minimizing it. But generally speaking, day to day, the people we elect to public office serve our interests, not their own, and not the government's interest. And we've gotten away from that. So right now the model is we have 100 U.S. senators. Maybe we need more U.S. senators. And maybe we need to break that up just by sheer size. When we set up our government, all right, so every time we grow as a state, we get more representation at the state level, do we not? I mean, look at Knox County, 450,000 people. At one time, we had 19 county commissioners. Now we have 11. Over the next 20 years, Knox County is going to grow considerably. We could conceivably add commission districts simply by growth. But we haven't done that at the national level. Why? Because they're supposed to be focused on national issues, not state issues. Yeah, the country grows. At what point, what number do we need to reach when we say we need to add 1 or 2 senators to every state? Because we've grown as a nation so large that our senators don't actually do the work that they were elected to do. They've got an army of unelected bureaucrats functioning as an elected official.
But I mean, it'd still be even state by state. So it would be every state adds 1, so they go to 3, and so we have 150 in Senate. Is that what you're talking about? So it still keeps the even number?
No, yes, you would still have to have equal representation. My point is, at one time when we elected state senators, they were able to manage the work that they were elected to do.
I don't know, because again, it goes, my failure, my terrible civics grade notwithstanding, it's like, what is, and this is something that that has like major philosophical implications depending on who's sitting across from me, is what is the role of the federal government?
Well, it's not affordable housing, that's for certain.
And that's one of the things you want to talk about. Growing the federal government by numbers. I get what you're after, and if we're gonna grow it, that would be the preferred way. But it's like, it's to me, it's what is it? National defense and interstate commerce. And what do those things mean? And like, because one of the issues for me, like, okay, so perfect example. This podcast, by definition, is interstate. Anything that touches the internet is interstate by definition.
Yes,
Supreme Court
true.
precedents in place.
Yes,
I have two businesses, one business, two locations in Knox County, right? I have zero internet sales. I do zero online sales of any sort, anything like that. I'm an interstate business. I have customers that are on their way from Kentucky to Georgia or something like that stop in because they need the products I sell. I have, customers that are from North Carolina that come into the state to do some work because they have some temporary work here in town, and they find me and they use me for the services that I provide and the products that I carry. But I'm an interstate, so I'm subject to the Interstate Commerce Clause, and I have to do jump through all the hoops and stuff like that. And I can't get a good explanation why that makes sense.
Well, all right. So if you're looking at me to solve that problem,
No, I'm not. I'm just saying.
Right, no, wait. Let me rephrase that. If you're looking at me to tell you that it makes sense, I can't, because I'm going to be brutally honest with you. We are overtaxed and overregulated. Our federal government is far too big. And when I say we need more elected representation in Washington, I mean that. I mean people accountable to us actually doing the work, not unaccountable individuals doing the work. So,
right, like
and
and
that applies locally.
Right,
I mean,
my thing's always like
50,000 people. We got 11 county commissioners. What are the county commissioners actually doing? We elected them to keep us steered in the right direction. They're governing. And for the state of Tennessee and the county of Knox, I think we do it extremely well compared to some of the other 7 states that I've lived in. Some of the other states I've lived in are they're a mess.
Right, like Georgia's voting laws are like top 5 in the country as far as strictness, but they're fine. It's Georgia that's the problem. New Jersey and they're tough. They're tough voting laws.
New Jersey, Illinois, Florida. Look, there are places in this country where your business cannot thrive. Your business is owned by a corporation because it cannot thrive. There's just not enough meat left on the bone, and it's a balance. We can quickly get there. We got to stop over-regulating, and while I understand the need for an interstate commerce clause, I'm not certain it applies to your business.
I don't like that's the thing. It's like what again? It's one of those things that maybe back in the day when it was put into place, it may have had good intentions or even a functional good means.
Yeah, I don't think we had the internet then.
But it's like and so like I had my lawyer.
The government has not kept up.
Right, I had my buddy on here who's a lawyer, and he focuses on like civil rights lawsuits and stuff like that. And so like he pays attention to the Supreme Court. I had him on when we were talking about Amy Coney Barrett and other stuff like that, he was explaining it to me and why it's that way. And it's like, well, like the immediate thing for me was the question is like, why would the Supreme Court do that? Like, because it's all Supreme Court precedents that put it in place. Why would Supreme Court say that if you have a Facebook page as a business, you sell apples that you grow on your farm in Granger County, Tennessee, and you only sell them in your farm in Granger County, Tennessee. You don't ship them across state lines. Nobody ships anything to you that you resell, nothing like that. But you have a Facebook page to interact with your customers on. You're under the Interstate Commerce Clause. And it's like, why? Why would the Supreme Court want that?
So I think you need to attack it from a First Amendment standpoint, and I'll tell you why. So a friend of mine argued a case in front of the New Jersey Supreme Court, and then the case was heard by the U.S. Supreme Court, and it had to do with billboards. And I'm going to tell you, brother, it was straight out of the box a First Amendment issue, tied to a First Amendment issue. there was a community that wanted to restrict the placement of a billboard, not because of what it said, free speech, but they wanted to restrict where the billboard was placed. Had ownership of the property. Nothing offensive was going on the billboard. There was a zoning restriction that said we don't want that kind of signage. Well, why? They could not make a compelling argument that overweighed his right to free speech to have that billboard in place.
Okay, so just to try to follow it. So zoning is created by the local governance, though, right?
Well, you would think.
I mean, that would be my I mean, that's the question at play here. If to me, like, you know, within all sorts of things, but I mean, if
the states that weigh in on zoning issues and apply it to the state unilaterally are the ones that have the problems. In Tennessee, we have very little of that issue. It's getting worse. Recode. Oh my gosh. You know, there are things going on that are pushing us in directions we ought not be going.
Because I mean, for me, like, one of the things that I truly up there with school board budget, like understanding planning commissions and zoning. The point of zoning, I guess, is like I always joke. Like, I remember playing SimCity when I was a kid, like, fun game, whatever. And you have the green boxes and the yellow boxes and the blue boxes for your industrial, commercial,
I'm shaking
whatever.
my head up and down.
Right, and
I
you
have
have
no
your
idea because I didn't play SimCity.
Because you were back there in the Book of Job or whatever.
There are intricacies in the game that,
and that's
yes,
right. Because again, that's one of the things I don't understand is like what is the point of zoning or planning? And the point is to allow for growth and not have to have a residential complex right next to a paper mill that smells like cow fart or dog farts
right,
and
something
wood
like
chips
that.
or whatever.
Something like that.
You know, and so it's to try to make it a more palatable community or whatever. And it's like, I get that, but it's all like like almost as soon as one of those comes out, it's always it's always before commission about an adjustment to or what I mean, that's half of what do they do?
Use on review, and we need an exception to that rule,
right?
Because X.
And so it's like, I mean, to me, it's like, well, either we need to fully manage exactly what you can do on your property that you own, or not manage it at all, because apparently we're not doing either. So we're doing nothing.
Very well. No, we're doing either. We're just not doing it very well.
Right, because it's like, again, the point being is like we're going to spend years developing a planning diagram for a county, and then as soon as that diagram hits the hits the floor and goes into effect, it's exception and
you mean like the 5 houses per acre they approved, you know, in a rural area of West Knoxville that I went before the commission on before they changed their name, and I was told people want walkable communities. I was like, they're planning for 20 years from now when there's high rises around my, you know, 1.5 acre lot. I don't get it either. All right. And it really doesn't make any sense. But there's a planner who's getting paid very good money to make those decisions based on which way the wind's blowing.
And that's what's weird to me about it, because, like, you know, I have a particular here for anybody out there that's in the North Shore area, and we have their North Shore Corridor Association that's been fighting the certain developer
backyard association.
Sort of. I mean, like, you know, like there's both parties are dirty, or not dirty in like the corrupt sort of way, but like dirty tactics to play the game, but because that's how you have to play the game or whatever. Because Compass reported on it recently. That like one of the things this developer wanted to put in like 600 unit development or whatever on this stretch over just up the street from me here, and you know, the neighborhood was like, the neighbors and stuff were like, we can't fit that and blah blah blah, and so it's been a big fight back and forth, and they got approval from the commission ended up approving it at some point or something like that, and then the association sued about it and went to some court, and it got the approval got revoked because part of their plan was to put in their own wastewater treatment facility, and that was not zoned. And it's like, this is the level we're going to because nobody cares about a wastewater facility. It's not about a wastewater facility. Realistically, that's a good thing. If a developer
you
is
have
willing
to have wastewater and right.
Right. If a developer is willing to do that because he wants to put it in there, then that developer is willing to work with you on what's going on here. The problem is
most
that
developers are
right. North Shore can't handle the traffic. The schools that the development would go into can't handle the population, and that's the real question. But those ones aren't actionable defenses for why I want to keep them out. And some of it absolutely is. I don't want that. I don't want the traffic driving through my neighborhood. I don't want those neighbors. Whatever. That's part of it too, for sure. But the level that the vitriol and dirty plays of the game goes to is that we're going to pitch a fit about a wastewater treatment facility because that's one thing we know we can get them on instead of it being this isn't what we can't function. Like the real story of it is we can't handle the traffic, period. The schools can't handle the kids. We can't handle the traffic. That's what's going on here. And the problem to me is that the commission approved it knowing that. And there's nothing in place to fix that the actual problems because we need the houses for sure. We need the development for all this incoming. We are growing quickly. I got a friend of mine who's been trying to buy a house for over a year now, and it's a house he either can't afford it. He could have afforded it a couple of years ago, but he can't afford it because it's move-inable, or it's a shithole, and he's going to have to spend a bunch. He can afford it, but he's going to have to spend a bunch of money getting it livable. And he's got a 6-month-old, and he doesn't want to move into a house that he has to renovate immediately. And those are your options right now, unless you get into the high bracket or the real low bracket. But if you're looking in the 100 to 250 in Knox County right now, you're either buying a shithole and going to spend the next 5 years cleaning it up, or you're going to pay $400 or $500 for it because that's the way the market's working right now. And so we need inventory. That's it's such a weird thing to call houses inventory to me, but we need the inventory. And so this would be a great thing for that need, but all the things around it don't exist.
All right. So here's the funny thing. I say funny thing. It's not funny. It is the nature of the beast. So if you don't plant the infrastructure beforehand, if you don't look 20 years out, you're going to run into these problems down the road. Because who wants to live in Loudoun County and commute to Knoxville? Well, there are people...
Sheriff's deputies because they can't afford it. Something like
there are people that live 100 miles from, where they work.
Right.
And that idea in this part of the country is foreign. Now, the people in Loudoun County will drive 20, 30 minutes to the grocery store. The people in Knox County,
like 2 minutes
in different parts of Knox County, will not.
Right.
So again, insofar as the infrastructure goes, you got to make it really comes down to, what are you willing to do? Now you have to look at, we got to widen this road. What would happen if we widen North Shore? Can we? There are wetlands involved. There's all this other stuff involved. Well, there are portions you can, there are portions you can't. Now you're talking about eminent domain and a taking, and, all of these things have to be considered. Well, for me, it goes back. I'll use one of them old sayings my parents or grandparents used to say, don't worry about the mule, just load the wagon. Or put another way, don't put the cart before the horse. We put the cart before the horse. We didn't expect
who's the cart, who's the horse here?
25 years ago or 40 years ago, Knox County would be where it's at.
Right, and I agree, but it's one of those. It's like,
so now what do we do?
Right,
what's the solution?
Right, that's the problem that I'm seeing too, is because it's like, the demand is there. The people that own the properties that are selling the properties to these developers, they sold them, so they're happy, I guess. But these developers are in a weird spot because they're trying to, and we like to demonize the developer from time to time, which I'm sure there's some shady ones out there, and that's fine. But
how about flying cars?
Where are they? I want mine.
Well,
I don't want one.
Wouldn't that be a solution?
I don't know. I'll tell you one of my things. One of my very non-libertarian things that I'm truly into is that shopping center down next to campus where the Walmart barely survived. Mm-hmm. That model of building needs to be normal in Knox County. I think that's something that we need to push all over county, especially in city limits, but countywide. I think if you're going to build a new shopping center development, parking underneath. How much of Kingston Pike is a parking lot? You know, how much of Middlebrook is a parking lot?
Let me ask you this. All right, so you're saying that, and I don't disagree with you.
And I try to be a libertarian.
So there's 3 businesses on Kingston Pike with big parking lots, and they don't want to give their business up. They don't want to give their parking lot up.
Right.
Okay.
I said new development.
Okay, new development. So there's a new development right behind my house. My property lines, I've mentioned this before, lines up to city property, stuff that got annexed.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So here, let me ask you this. I paid for my home. I got 1.5 acres. Nothing prevents the county from striking a deal with the city to rezone all that property out there and ultimately take a part of my property so they can build larger buildings to accommodate growth and more population. Should we do that?
Hold on, they can take it for non-infrastructural development.
If they needed to, if we grew so large, we didn't have any place to put people anymore.
I mean, if that's
and
the case,
they want
right. I mean, market value would be part of the thing, and how do you value the market? But I mean, that would be the minimum. They got to pay you for it, and it's got to be real market value.
I don't want to leave. It's my home. I don't want to leave, and I don't want you to have my property. Well, you don't need it. Who are you to tell me I don't need it? It's mine.
Right. The true philosophical answer to me is like, no, it's yours. They can suck it.
Right. So I'm with you. Here's the thing.
They need to give you. They need to present a number large enough for you to sell it. That's whoever it is.
So
I'm just saying that's the only way that you should.
I've
give
never done anything in my life for money, so there is no number you can give me, and I'm not going to take it. It's a matter of principle for me. I'm not going to take it. So, all right. So here's my suggestion. Here's what they're doing in Newark, New Jersey. They do it in New York City. They do it in most major cities. They offer incentives for you to build up. Well, I have 3 small children. I have 2 small. What's the average? How many children do people have nowadays?
I think it's
young couples.
I think it's
1 or 2.
I think it's we are below replacement at this point.
0.7 children.
I think it's like 0.46 or something like that. Or I'm sorry, 1.46. It's 1 and some change. It's less than replacement.
So when you get divorced, anyway, moving on.
You each get 0.76 kids. Yes.
All right. So what they're doing is they're building up. So I have small children. I want them to go to a good school, and I don't want them to have to ride an elevator for 40 stories to go to school. And they need grass, and they want a dog, and blah blah blah. People need to be able to choose where they live. So while the developers want to build and solve the problem of available housing, you have to build that housing, where you can build it, where it can be accommodated. You can't continue to build single-family homes within the city limits of Knox County, city of Knoxville. You just can't. If you have a piece of property and you want to subdivide it and you can build a single-family home, and I think you ought to be allowed to. But you have to be reasonable. There has to be a check and balance. You have to just look at it and say, what really makes sense, what's reasonable, what's fair. And if you're not doing that, people are trying to solve complex, large problems, and they're forgetting the individual rights property owners have and people have. Right. You don't have a right to a scenic view if you don't own that scenic.
I agree with
that property behind you.
Right.
You're not entitled to that.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So you were talking about the paper mill. Look, if there's a large vacant plot of land next to you and it's zoned residential, there's nothing that prevents a paper mill from going in there.
Right. Well, you'd have to have some water. Most paper mills are on a river or something like that. But yeah.
You understand what I'm talking about. Your government has the power to take everything you own.
Right. I mean, they take most. Not most. They take a good chunk anyway in taxes. Get a couple more beers than me, and I'll get real hard libertarian on you and tell you how much I don't like democracy.
Well, I think you like democracy.
I think I do too. But there is it's a valid thought experiment, for lack of a better word, to think about the to just take democracy as an inherent good is a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for here, is a little shallow, for lack of a better word. Like, it's just a little, like, just to say, well, democracy is good. Well, it's not necessarily. It's better than, but, you know, like the terrible analogy, but it's the, you know, the thought experiment analogy is, you know,
I want it noted that I haven't
you're
made the comment about we're not a democracy, we're
Right.
representing. I just want that noted.
I was saying,
I
like,
know what you mean.
Democracy, like,
Just like you know what I mean when I
Right.
say the Democrat Party.
simple democracy says if there's 3 people in this room and 2 of us vote to kill the other one, it's not wrong.
Yeah, you know something? I had a similar conversation the other day, and my concern right now
I think I did the
is
same joke with Matt, and I said we'd kill the dog, but whatever. He didn't take it
something
very
like
well.
that. Well, my concern now is that you know, the way the lack of a better term, the loony left is working, I'm going to prison or a re-education camp or something. I have to be isolated from the rest